Welcome to the live show. Yes, we are back. It is currently 3:38 a.m. Ooh, yep, we are back. Welcome to the live show. All right, with that being said, it is the 24th of January 2025. Ladies and gentlemen, here we are. We are back. Okay, we are absolutely back. This early morning, we want to check out the full debate between the Republicans and the Democrats concerning the Laken Riley's situation. Okay. Of course, the Laken Riley Act has already been passed. Um, yep. So we're just gonna sort of kind of like scheme through what the process looked like before the passage of the act. All right, with that being said, thank you for tuning in to the live show. It is your boy Genesis. Welcome. And if you're up, nice. If you're sleeping, wonderful. Okay, you should be getting some rest anyway. For the night owl like me, welcome to the live show. Double tap your screen, subscribe to the channel, join the memberships. It is $4.99. Yep, $4.99. All right, with that being said, let's dive into the show. All right, here we go.
For what purpose does the gentleman from California, Mr. McClintock, seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, pursuant to House Resolution 53, I call up the bill S5 and ask for its immediate consideration in the House.
The clerk will report the title of the bill.
Senate 5, an act to require the Secretary of Homeland Security to take into custody aliens who have been charged in the United States with theft and for other purposes.
The House is not in order. Members, please take your conversations outside of the floor. Pursuant to House Resolution 53, the bill is considered read. The bill shall be debatable for 1 hour, equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on the Judiciary or their respective designees. The gentleman from California, Mr. McClintock, and the gentleman from Maryland, Mr. Raskin, each will control 30 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from California, Mr. McClintock.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days in which to revise and extend their remarks and to insert extraneous material on S5.
Without objection.
I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentleman is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, S5 bears the name of Laken Riley, murdered by one of the 8 million illegal aliens that Joe Biden and his Democratic supporters deliberately allowed into our country over these last 4 years. In Laken's case, the murderer was paroled into this country through a shocking abuse of that power. He was repeatedly arrested for theft and other crimes in sanctuary jurisdictions, and each time released back onto our streets. Just months before he murdered Laken, he was arrested for theft. But ICE couldn't take him into custody because of the Biden-Harris administration's policies that shielded such monsters from arrest and deportation. This measure, first introduced by Representative Mike Collins, would require ICE detention for illegal aliens who were charged with, arrested for, or convicted of any burglary, theft, larceny, or shoplifting offense. Now, the Democrats have argued that, well, mere accusation of committing a crime should not be grounds for detention, and besides, shoplifting's no big deal. Well, they ignore the fact that every illegal alien is currently required to be detained by current law throughout the pendency of their asylum claims. The Democrats have thumbed their noses at this law for the past 4 years. Their excuse is that they are prioritizing detaining more dangerous offenders. Well, this bill does exactly that, yet they still oppose it. During his first term, President Trump proved that the president, on his own authority, can secure our borders. President Biden proved that a president who's determined to make a mockery of our immigration laws can willfully open our borders to the most violent criminals, terrorists, gangs, and cartels on this planet, and then use the Democrat sanctuary laws to protect them. This national nightmare ended at noon on Monday. But what of future presidents? This bill assures that what happened to Laken Riley cannot happen again should another Joe Biden disgrace the presidency. Now, our Senate colleagues have added to the Laken Riley Act parts of Sarah's law, introduced by Representative Randy Feenstra and Senator Joni Ernst, to mandate detention for illegal aliens who commit any offense that involves death or serious bodily injury. Sarah's law was named after Sarah Root. On January 31, 2016, as Sarah drove home after celebrating her college graduation, an illegal alien who was street racing while drunk slammed into her SUV, snapping Sarah's spine and fracturing her skull. Sarah died 4 days later on February 4th. Within hours of her death, a judge set the illegal alien's bond at $50,000 because no detainer was filed, despite a desperate request by local police to do so. The administration defended this dereliction of duty because, quote, the illegal alien had not been convicted of a criminal charge and therefore was not an enforcement priority. S5 closes this loophole by requiring detention for illegal aliens, like Sarah Root's killer, excuse me, who are arrested for, charged with, admit to, or are convicted of any crime that resulted in someone's death or serious bodily injury. In addition, this bill includes elements of Representative Jeff Van Drew's Detain and Deport Illegal Aliens Who Assault Cops Act, which passed the House last year and applies the same mandate for those who assault law enforcement officials. Now, this bill would also allow states to bring a civil action against derelict federal officers who refuse to enforce immigration law. This was first introduced by Representatives Dan Bishop and Chip Roy in the Sue for Immigration Enforcement Act. That bill also passed the House twice as part of the Laken Riley Act. That bill was also killed by Senate Democrats last year. Well, whether it's sober reflection or perhaps the sobering results of the November election, a handful of Democrats in both the House and the Senate have now come over to support this law, and we welcome them. We wish them well in convincing the majority of their party that they need to change course, if not for the good of our country, then at least for the good of themselves. We'll take their support any way we can get it. I have every confidence that President Trump will end this scourge upon our nation during the next 4 years. This law, and the others that will follow it, will assure that no future president will be able to unleash upon our country what Joe Biden and his Democratic supporters did. I urge my colleagues to support it, and I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman from California reserves. The gentleman from Maryland is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentleman is recognized.
I rise in opposition to S5. All these fine speeches, all these fancy parties with billionaires and congressmen in tuxedos, all these executive orders for big oil and the tech broligarchs, all these complete and unconditional pardons for Proud Boys, Oath Keepers, and violent extremists who chanted, "Hang Mike Pence," and smashed, swarmed, and wounded our police officers in this building with steel poles, baseball bats, American flags, Confederate battle flags, and bear mace. All this sound and fury on day one and week one, but nothing to bring down grocery prices, nothing to bring down the cost of rent as they promised, nothing to improve our health care system or build on our success in the last Congress in reducing prescription drug prices, nothing to get health insurance coverage for millions of people who don't have it, nothing to bring down the cost of housing or build new housing, nothing to combat the nightmare of climate change other than the full-scale retreat of withdrawing from the Paris Climate Accord, nothing to address the real problems faced by the American people. So today they want to change the subject from the indelible and shocking public safety disaster of the president releasing hundreds of convicted felons, specifically violent, cop-beating felons caught on tape in the act, whom he had incited on January 6, 2021, back into the population with no plan for protecting the American people or the public safety. So what do they want to talk about today in their wisdom? Public safety and immigration. Well, great, let's do it. This bill does nothing to address the major problems we face in the immigration system or to secure the American border. Nor does it do anything to address the major problems we face in public safety, such as the central and overriding problem of out-of-control gun violence, which takes tens of thousands of American citizens' lives every year and is the leading cause of death among American citizen children up to the age of 18. Now, Mr. Speaker, it may surprise a lot of Americans, but we actually know how to solve these problems, how to make substantial progress on both immigration and public safety. The roadblock is that the majority completely lacks the political will to do it. Why? Well, the Republicans are divided between two extreme positions. The big business tech oligarchs who bankroll their party, who love cheap foreign labor under the current regime, and the inflamed nativist mega element who want to shut down all immigration, including legal immigration, and believe in right-wing conspiracy theories like the racist Great Replacement theory. Look, Congress could pass bipartisan, comprehensive immigration reform this week. Senate Republicans and Democrats reached a powerful and painstaking compromise with President Biden last year to fortify our border with more border agents and more enforcement, more detection technology, more asylum judges, and more funding. But President Trump told House Republicans to tank this popular bipartisan agreement, to sink it. He didn't want a bipartisan border solution to improve things in the real world. He wanted a permanent border crisis to run against on TV. Not doing anything means that Trump doesn't offend his big business supporters who want cheap foreign labor under the current regime, but it allows him to pander indefinitely to his mega base with nativist rhetoric and tiny little messaging bills that move a few words around but don't fundamentally change anything. We should add to the tough border measures already negotiated last Congress a meaningful pathway to citizenship proposed for Dreamers, TPS holders, and other law-abiding, productive immigrants. If we move from demagoguery to deliberation, we can flesh this out and we can make immigration work for America, a nation built on immigrants. We have huge job shortages in agriculture, in manufacturing, in retail, in seafood, in nursing and hospitals, and many other areas. We should not be plunging America into chaos to deport millions of people when we already need millions of new people to work here. If the GOP plan of deporting 12 million people were really to happen, it would plunge us into another Trump economic crisis like the last one under COVID-19, but maybe even cause a depression this time. The vast majority of Americans know what common sense dictates. We must make it a lot harder for people to get into our country illegally, but we must make it a lot easier for people to get into our country lawfully. Today, only 2% of people seeking admission lawfully are admitted, and Donald Trump and his first administration crippled legal immigration into the country. He banned many legal immigrants unable to prove that they have high incomes. He banned immigrants from 13 specific countries. He banned most visa applicants and most skilled temporary workers, deeming them an economic threat. We must reform our system consistent with our values as a nation. Similarly, when it comes to public safety, we could arrive at a common sense, bipartisan agenda right now to make our communities a lot safer if we were serious about it. Let's take the central problem of gun violence, for example. which now takes more than 48,000 American lives a year and is the leading cause of death for children and young people in America up to the age of 18. Gun violence costs America an astonishing $557 billion a year, Mr. Speaker, more than $500 billion a year because of gun violence. Mass shootings with an AR-15 or other assault weapons have become a terrifying feature of gun violence in America, although they account for just over 1% of the tens of thousands of lives we lose generally to gun violence, where old-fashioned handgun homicides and suicides and accidents continue to cause the vast majority of death. Here are some policies that the vast majority of Americans support that we could pass this week if they would allow us to do it, Mr. Speaker. Congress could close the loopholes in the Brady legislation, like the internet loophole and the private gun show loophole. We could pass universal violent criminal background checks on all gun purchases, something supported by upwards of 90% of the American people. Vast majorities of people of both political parties, independents, conservatives, liberals, gun owners, non-gun owners, almost everybody supports it. We could pass a military-style assault weapons ban, which more than 60% of Americans support. We could crack down on the proliferating danger of ghost guns, and we could expand red flag laws nationwide. Alas, our colleagues refuse to do any of it because their well-advertised compassion for the American victims of violent crimes committed by undocumented aliens, which they base their entire argument on and which we all share, apparently does not extend to the far larger class of American victims of violent gun crimes committed by other American citizens, even though we have not just 48,000 Americans killed every year, but 115,000 American citizens wounded and maimed trying to survive this gun violence debacle handed to us by the NRA and their followers in Congress. They argue that the Second Amendment prevents all these common sense gun safety measures, even though the Supreme Court has repeatedly upheld them, including an assault weapon ban, criminal background checks on gun buyers, and so on. When a white supremacist gunman bearing an AR-15 assassinates dozens of American citizens' school children in Connecticut or Florida, dozens of citizen and non-citizen Walmart shoppers in El Paso, Texas, or supermarket shoppers in Buffalo, or worshipers at the Mother Emanuel Church in Charleston, South Carolina, or worshipers at the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, our colleagues extend only thoughts and prayers. They say nothing can be done, alas. There's just evil in the world, and the Second Amendment keeps them from acting. We just have to accept this as the inescapable human price and sacrifice paid for the Second Amendment, even though that's not what the Supreme Court says. Well, at least today shows they think something can be done to stop violent crime in America. Will they take their newfound sense of moral outrage and compassion and apply it not just in one case, but to the tens of thousands of victims of gun violence in America? America is waiting for an answer. What is the majority proposing today? Well, S5 is a bill to subject to mandatory detention not just undocumented people who've been convicted of theft, shoplifting, and other criminal offenses, which has been the law supported unanimously by both parties since 1996, but people who've been simply charged with such offenses or arrested for such offenses, even if the charges are dropped or even if they're never filed in the first place. It's an odd way to fix the border because it has nothing to do with the border, and it's an extremely attenuated and constitutionally dubious way to promote public safety. The vast majority of serious crimes committed in America are committed by American citizens, not aliens, and the vast majority of aliens don't commit crimes at all. But this bill doesn't even focus on the culpable class of undocumented immigrants who commit crimes. That the law already does. It focuses on those who are arrested, even if they're never charged, or those who are charged with crimes, even if they're never convicted, or even if the charges are dropped. A young person in Dhaka who's with a group of friends, when one of them is arrested for shoplifting and then all the kids get charged, will be subject to mandatory detention and deportation even if the child was not shoplifting and the charges are dropped. The bill is likely to pass, no doubt, because of the profound sympathy we all share for the parents and family of Laken Riley, who have suffered an unthinkable, totally shocking, and profoundly unnecessary trauma. This should not be a partisan issue, and it should not be demagogued for partisan purposes. But when we get serious about comprehensive threats to public safety in our immigration system, we will have to address the mass crises staring us in the face, like the gun violence epidemic, which takes the lives of tens of thousands of American citizens every year at the hands overwhelmingly of U.S. citizen gunmen. We reserve, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman reserves. The gentleman from California is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, the so-called bipartisan legislation that the gentleman refers to would have made it impossible for President Trump to have taken the actions he has just taken to secure our border until illegal immigration exceeded 4,000 entries a day. That's why it collapsed in the Senate and it was ultimately disavowed by its own author. The gentleman is correct to lament the terrible violence in our nation, especially in our dangerous democratic cities. So here's a modest proposal. Take the criminals off the streets, like Laken Riley's killer, which is exactly what this bill does. I'm now pleased to yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Indiana, Mr. Yakum.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today in strong support of the Laken Riley Act. The Biden-Harris administration was marked by failure and corruption. But the failure that sits head and shoulders above all others was their open border policy. Almost immediately after President Biden was sworn in, America was overrun by a massive, unprecedented surge in illegal immigrants. The chart next to me shows just how dramatically President Biden failed compared to his predecessors. Over double the southern border crossings of any president since 2001. This border chaos was ignored for all 4 years of the Biden and Harris administration. It was downplayed as seasonal or written off as mere ebbs and flows. Find me somewhere on this chart where the surge was only seasonal. Show me where it ebbed or flowed. Illegal immigrants continue streaming across President Biden's open border in droves because they knew they'd face no consequences from an administration that was more focused on inventing new rhetorical flourishes to paper over this very real crisis. More content to wish it away rather than actually do something about it. President Biden's failure at the border had impacts across America. Every town was a border town. Once sleepy places were suddenly forced to contend with sex trafficking, drug trafficking, child labor, infectious diseases, petty theft, and yes, even rape and murder. Cartels got rich, and small towns in my district were left scrambling for money and resources. This chaos was a choice made every single day of Joe Biden's presidency. No more. Monday marked a new era. President Trump has already taken more decisive action in 48 hours than President Biden took in 4 years. Let's send this bill to President Trump's desk. I urge my colleagues to vote for sanity and common sense. I urge them to vote yes. I yield back.
Reserve.
Gentleman from California reserves. Gentleman Maryland is recognized.
I yield 2 minutes to the distinguished gentleman from New York, Representative Espaillat.
Gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in opposition to S5. I rise in opposition to S5 because the bill is redundant. In fact, the provisions of this bill to penalize those that have committed violent crimes are already included in a penal code. So this legislation is redundant. What it does do, in fact, is it would force ICE to treat minor offenses as violent ones. That includes, of course, a child caught stealing a candy bar from Walmart, someone who jumps the turnstile in a New York City subway, or takes a box of cornflakes because they otherwise have no way to make ends meet. But it also sends a chilling effect out there amongst law-abiding families and workers who are too frightened to show up to their shifts at farms, hospitals, businesses, and schools across the country. Mr. Speaker, this bill is redundant. And frankly, the Laken Riley family should not be subject to the political theater that's about to happen here today. In fact, we should be looking at this issue to fix the problems of both the border, but also to regularize dreamers, farm workers, and keep families whole. At the end of the day, dreamers are productive. They contribute to our society. Farmers need their workers, and we need their workers. And families need to stay together because families that are divided are weak families, and that makes up a weak nation. So this is a redundant bill. While they are targeting the immigrant communities for stealing a candy bar, the folks from January 6th, get this, were released. They were released and sent out to our communities, felons. Today, I think of Officer Daniel Hodge, whose gas mask was ripped off his face as he was punched in the face and was stuck in between two doors. America saw the film. America saw the video of him crying for help.
Gentleman's time has expired.
We will continue to fight for sanity and against any political theater that happens here in our floor. Thank you. I yield back.
We reserve.
Gentleman reserved. Gentleman from California is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Iowa, Mr. Feenstra, the author of Sarah's Law that is incorporated into this bill.
Gentleman is recognized.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I rise today in strong support of the Laken Riley Act, which includes my bill, Sarah's Law, as an amendment. In the early morning hours of January 31st, 2016, Michelle and Scott Root received the call that every parent never wants to hear. Their daughter, Sarah, had been killed in a car accident. What's worse is that Sarah was murdered by an illegal immigrant who was driving while drunk, 3 times over the legal limit. However, instead of answering for his crimes, the illegal immigrant posted bail, was released from jail, and fled our country, never to be seen from again. This egregious loophole in the federal law must be closed so that victims like Sarah Root can receive justice and criminals can do the hard time they deserve. That's why alongside Senator Joni Ernst, I introduced Sarah's Law to ensure that any illegal immigrant who injures or kills an American citizen is swiftly detained and punished for the fullest extent of the law. As a father of 4, I can't fathom the pain the Root family feels to this day. It's truly heartbreaking. I urge my colleagues to support this legislation to deliver justice for Sarah and her family. I look forward to President Trump signing this bill into law so that illegal immigrants who break our laws are held accountable for their crimes. This must be done. Thank you, and I yield back.
Reserve.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Maryland is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield 2 minutes to the distinguished gentleman from Florida, Representative Frost.
Gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I oppose this bill for many reasons, but I really want to get to the heart of the problem for me. On day 1, President Trump started his project to deport thousands of our neighbors, even legal immigrants, asylum seekers, and people who were born here in the United States. The Laken Riley Act is another piece of that tragic project. Laken Riley's death is a tragedy. She should be alive today. And I'm glad that that killer is facing accountability, as should anyone who harms an innocent person. But we got to be really clear about the bill in front of us. This bill does not make our communities safer. It gives this extreme president the authority to do something that actually most Americans don't agree with. changing our laws so that way any immigrant is detained if they are accused, not convicted, accused of a crime undermines due process. This bill requires the government to detain people who pose no risk to our communities. It's a shameful bill that will result in the violent detention of innocent people and children. Many are going to regret enabling Trump's brutal agenda, and the question is when? When abusive boyfriends trap women in violent relationships by threatening to falsely accuse them of a crime, will you think back to this day? When ICE raids a kid's classroom or goes into the Sunday school service to lock up some classmates, will you feel shame then? When there are no more resources because we've been prioritizing looking at promising young DACA students and rounding them up for no reason, will you regret voting for this bill then? Our country has failed to ensure that every American has the resources they need to live a good life. And it's because of the greedy, richest 1%, corporations and spineless politicians that you don't have health care, that you need multiple jobs, that your check isn't big enough for those bills, and that you can't afford to rent and buy, but it's not the fault.
Gentleman's time has expired.
I grant the gentleman an additional 1 minute.
It's not the fault of our fellow Americans who might be undocumented. The solution here is not violence. On its face, this is an evil bill meant to empower a violent man who is not interested in solving the problems of working people, but interested in power. And it seems that any bill that gives him power, he and his party will ruthlessly pursue, but not me. I urge a no on this bill and yield back.
We reserve.
Maryland. Members are reminded to refrain from engaging in personalities towards the president. Gentleman from California is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd remind the gentleman that current law already requires every illegal immigrant to be detained. That law is simply not being enforced. This bill says if that illegal alien, who's supposed to be in custody anyway, is arrested for other crimes, they really have to be taken off the streets. If this bill had been law, Laken Riley would be alive today. I'm now pleased to yield 3 minutes to the gentleman from New Jersey, Mr. Van Drew.
Gentleman is recognized.
Thank you. You know, before I started, and again, these are not prepared notes, but I wanted to address a few of the things that the ranking member, Congressman Raskin, mentioned. And it seems to me that from what I hear on the other side is everything but really dealing with and focusing on what this bill says and what it does. He wanted to talk about inflation, which, by the way, was created on that other side, food prices and energy and utility, all of it. Want to talk about all that. Want to talk about gun violence. I'm willing to debate gun violence for hours and discuss the issue, but definitely, even on that issue, doesn't want to speak about the liberal policies that exist in so many urban areas where we let out violent criminals over and over and over again and change very often felonies to misdemeanors. You want to know about gun violence? That's what gun violence does. That's what gun violence is created by, so much that is happening there. Their answer would be to put more gun laws in place that inflict more regulation upon honest, good gun owners that don't ever do anything to anybody. It would be to impinge on Second Amendment rights. But I don't want to talk about that. I want to talk about this act because I know we are on the right side of this. Laken Riley was killed while going for a jog. That's the issue. An innocent woman who never did anything to anybody harmful in her life, that wanted to be a nurse, that wanted to help other people, that couldn't even get the last damn telephone call from her mother, was murdered. And then I hear from the ranking member, well, the vast majority of illegals don't commit crimes. My God, I hope not, because we've got close to 10 million of them as best we can tell, but there are hundreds that were on the terror watch list, thousands that have committed crimes and where the problems really do exist, and that's unacceptable. This administration has had recklessly abused the mass parole policies. It's flooded our nation with illegal immigrants. It never should have happened, and it impinges and hurts the security of the American people. I'm here to represent, we are here to represent the American people. And you know, across the country, we heard about the woman that was set afire in New York City. And what was the first thing that the city of New York, with its liberal policies, did? They refused to honor ICE's detainer request for the man responsible for setting another human being on fire. Our immigration laws have to be upheld. Failure to do so is why Laken Riley is not alive today. It's why Washington State Trooper Christopher Gadd's family will never see him. His children and his wife will never know him anymore. He's gone. It's why when Laken Riley struggled for almost a half hour, when she was beaten, when she was disfigured, when her head and skull was crushed, that we can't bring her back. We can't bring her life back. I don't want to hear about all this other political stuff. I don't think the American people do. They want an answer. And I'm pleased to see the Senate adopted.
Gentleman's time has expired.
I yield another 30 seconds to the gentleman.
Adopted the amendment that we wanted, which was to put in there the legislation that we had to detain and deport illegal aliens who assault cops. They've broken the law once. And now we were saying, my God, if you do it again, no, you are going to be detained, and you are going to be deported. And I'll tell you, a lot of Democrats are going to vote for it. I yield back.
Gentleman yields.
Reserve.
Gentleman from California reserves. Gentleman from Maryland is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield 3 minutes to the distinguished gentlelady from New York, Ms. Ocasio-Cortez.
I thank the ranking member. Mr. Speaker, I want the American people to know, with eyes wide open, what is inside this bill. Because we stand here just 2 days after President Trump gave unconditional pardons to violent criminals who attacked our nation's capital on January 6th. And these are the people who want you to believe, who want us to believe that they're trying to, quote unquote, keep criminals off the streets. When they are opening the floodgates. I want the American people to know what is in this bill. Because in the guise and in the wake of tragedy, we are seeing a fundamental erosion of our civil rights. In this bill, if a person is so much as accused of a crime, if someone wants to point a finger and accuse someone of shoplifting, they will be rounded up and put into a private detention camp and sent out for deportation without a day in court, without a moment to assert their right and without a moment to assert the privilege of innocent until proven guilty. Without being found guilty of a crime, they will be rounded up. That is what is inside this bill, a fundamental suspension of a core American value. And that is why I rise to oppose it. If you're a dreamer, all someone has to do is point a finger and you will be rounded up. And we have seen moments like these happen before. In the Patriot Act, in the wake of the travesty of 9/11, a fundamental suspension of American civil liberties. That is what we are seeing here today. Mr. Speaker, you may wonder why so many of our friends across the aisle who care so deeply about the rule of law happen to be so desperate to pass this bill, after they are unleashing people who attacked police officers here on this Capitol into roaming our streets, who are publicly saying now they want to get a gun. Suddenly, these folks care about public safety? I don't think so. Look no further than the price tag of this bill, $83 billion. They know that it can't be paid for. They know that the capacity is not there. And you know what will be there? Private prison companies are going to get flooded with money, who give this money, no doubt. I want folks at home to look. Look at what members of Congress are invested in private prison companies who receive this kind of money, and look at the votes on this bill. It is atrocious that people are lining their pockets with private prison profits in the name of a horrific tragedy and the victim of a crime. It is shameful. It is absolutely shameful. And Mr. Speaker, I'll conclude with this. In a few months, there are members of Congress who voted for this bill who are going to pretend they didn't know about all the bad things that are going to happen because of it. So when a private prison camp opens in your town, when a dreamer...
Time has expired.
I yield the gentlelady an additional 30 seconds.
So when a private prison camp opens in your town, and they say, we didn't know this was going to happen, know that they did, and they voted for it. When a dreamer is disappeared from your classroom, When the President of the United States destroys what is left of the Constitution, as he's announced in this attack on birthright citizenship, they will all say, we didn't know this was coming. And I want the American people to know that they did. This vote represents it. And with that, I yield back. Thank you very much.
Gentlelady yields.
We reserve.
Gentleman from Maryland reserves. Gentleman from California is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 2 minutes to the gentlelady from Georgia, Ms. Green.
Thank you. Well, I certainly hope we do open as many prisons as possible to round up as many illegal aliens that have invaded our country and those that are breaking our laws, killing our citizens, women and children, and causing complete havoc across our great land. I support the Laken Riley Act, and I support the Laken Riley Act because Laken Riley should be alive today. And she would be alive today if it hadn't have been for the Democrats and the Biden administration that ripped our border open and allowed this illegal alien monster to come into our country. And then in the state of New York, when this monster was arrested for committing crimes, the Democrat state of New York let him go. And that's how he came down to Georgia and murdered our Laken Riley. This is a bill that cannot get passed enough, and I'm so thankful that the American people overwhelmingly voted for Donald Trump so that we can sign this bill into law, and it can't happen fast enough. Thank God. But listening to my colleagues, the Democrats on the other side of the aisle, complain and whine and defend illegal aliens that break the law the minute they cross our border is pathetic. The American people are so sick and tired of it. They cannot believe what our country has gone through. And it is enough. It is absolutely enough. But they will go on and on to defend anyone that is not American because of their America Last policies. You talk about tax dollars used. Our tax dollars should be used defending Americans. And you want to talk about spending a lot of money? Spending a lot of money should happen for American causes, American purposes, and American security. Laken Riley is a young woman who should be living her American dream, and she had the right to do it. But people that come across our border illegally are not Americans, and they do not have rights here. And that is exactly why anytime they break a law, anytime they cross into our country, they should be rounded up and shipped out as fast as possible. And if we need to build more prisons, then we'll do it. Because the American people will support it. Thank you, Chair. I yield back.
Gentlelady yields.
Reserve.
Gentleman from California reserves. Gentleman from Maryland is recognized.
I yield 2 minutes to the distinguished gentlelady from Illinois, Representative Ramirez.
Thank you, Ranking Member. Thank you, Congressman. Oh. Mr. Speaker, it's hard to keep myself composed when I hear people and their hypocrisies that actually generate profits for them talk the way they do and then also use the word God somehow in their speech. Look, let me say this. We cannot realize justice by engaging in grave injustice. We cannot achieve safety by putting millions in harm's way. We cannot honor our ideals that we talk so much about in this place by undermining civil rights. Preemptively jailing people is not accountability. It's inhumanity. Mandatory, indefinite detention based on accusations, folks, accusations, not charges, not convictions, accusations. That's the tool of dictators, not democracies. So let me be clear. Laken Riley's death is a tragedy, and we have work to do to protect women and make our communities safer. So we should be bringing bills like Break the Cycle Violence Act to the floor, perhaps have a discharge petition and do it right now. But let's remember, undocumented immigrants, they didn't make college unaffordable. They didn't destroy our environment. They didn't deny insurance claims, or they didn't raise our rents. Scapegoating immigrants just deflects the accountability from the corporations and from the billionaires, bosses, profiting from everyday American hardships. That is what this is all about. Ending due process so that they can profit. I encourage my colleagues to vote no, and I yield back.
Gentlelady yields. Gentleman from Maryland reserves. Gentleman from California is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Missouri, Mr. Under.
Gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in strong support of Senate 5, the Laken Riley Act. But first, I'd like to point out that my Democrat colleagues are all exercised about the pardons of Donald Trump, of January 6 protesters, but they said not a word when President Biden commuted the sentences of 37 cold-blooded murderers on death row in our federal prisons. This bill is the Senate amended version of Representative Collins' bill that passed this chamber earlier this month. It is named after Laken Riley, the 22-year-old Georgia nursing student who was brutally murdered by a criminal illegal alien. Another casualty of the Biden-Harris Democrat open borders policies. This bill adds burglary, theft, larceny to a list of crimes for which it would be mandatory that illegal alien criminals be deported. The Senate also added a very important provision that adds assault of a law enforcement officer or causing bodily injury to another person to this act. The Laken Riley Act, when signed by President Trump, will begin the long and hard work of protecting Americans from the more than 10 million illegal aliens that were enabled by Biden's open border policies. On January 7th, I was very encouraged to see 48 of our Democrat colleagues in this chamber vote for the common sense protections that Americans support in the Laken Riley Act. Yesterday, 12 Senate Democrats joined all the Republicans in supporting this common sense measure. Look, deporting criminal illegal aliens should not be a partisan bill. I hope our Democrat colleagues will side with us on this issue to protect Americans and put Americans first. Thank you. I yield back.
Gentleman yields.
Reserve.
Gentleman from California Reserve. Gentleman from Maryland is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm yielding 2 minutes to the distinguished gentlelady from Michigan, Ms. Tlaib.
Thank you so much. It is so shameful that the first bill of the new Congress will put a target on the back of millions of our neighbors that work so hard, that build up our communities. It is also going to increase militarization of our neighborhoods. As somebody that grew up in Southwest Detroit, where you'll find 20 different ethnicities, people from all over the world, came together, and you should see how beautifully diverse it is, but how they built up communities and neighborhoods. They're an integral part of our neighborhood. And one of the things that I have been seeing over and over again on social media already, Mr. Chair, is literally militarization of Border Patrol, officials everywhere, just people scared and petrified because that's what's exactly happening, because this promotes racial profiling. The bill blatantly violates due process. I mean, these are literally being allegations and charges, not actual convictions. Y'all act like if somebody's undocumented, they can't be deported. They can. As a former immigration attorney, I know that for a fact. You're making this up so you can literally allow people to be profiled and discriminated against. Blame them for the cost of eggs? Is that what we're doing here? We're blaming them because you guys can't get corporate greed on a side that is a disease that is killing our economy? People can't afford housing? You think it's because of our immigrant neighbors? No. If you cared truly about fixing our immigration system, you'd go fix it so that U.S. citizens married to undocumented spouses can actually adjust their status, where we have mixed statuses because for 30 years we've ignored and vilified immigrants. Enough is enough. It will separate families. It would lead again to continued discrimination. It's shameful that my colleagues are giving into racist fear-mongering at the first opportunity to pass legislation to scapegoat our immigrant neighbors and fuel hate in our communities. I know what's going to happen. It won't just be undocumented. It'll be people like my mother who will get stopped and profiled. She have to carry her U.S. passport around? Are we asking people now to have documentation? That's what you want to turn our neighborhoods into, is militarization?
I yield the gentlelady an additional 30 seconds.
Gentlelady is recognized.
I just ask all of you to truly understand what this will do to our communities. I urge our colleagues to please vote no on this divisive bill. And it's so important to understand what you're going to turn our communities and our neighborhoods into. We can't allow that to continue to happen. With that, I yield.
Members are reminded to address their remarks to the chair. The gentleman from Maryland is recognized. Reserves. Gentleman from California is recognized. Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Collins. He is the author of the Laken Riley Act in the House, representing her hometown and her grieving family. Gentleman from Georgia is recognized.
Thank the gentleman for yielding, and thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just want to take a minute to talk a little bit about the journey of this bill. When this tragedy happened, and we took a look at what could be done to make sure that this doesn't happen again, and I talked with the family and asked them if we could put Laken Riley's name on it, and their response was, Congressman, if there is anything that Congress can do to make sure that this doesn't happen to another family, then please put her name on it and get this thing passed. That we did. 37 Democrats with all Republicans in the House passed that bill in the 118th Congress. Sent it over to the Senate, and where so many of the other good bills went, it fell into the black hole of the Senate, never to be seen again. Had another discussion with the family later and told them where the bill was sitting and what was going on. And I told them I could never let it go. I just couldn't let this go. Because Laken fought with every ounce in her body to stay alive that day. And I vowed I would fight with every ounce I had to make sure that we protected families across this country. And that we did. I want to thank the family for allowing us to do that. Mr. Speaker, I also want to thank my colleagues for sticking in here and voting with us. Not just the Republicans, but the Democrats. People on the other side of the aisle. Not just in the House, but it went through the Senate. And we had Senate Democrats that went with this bill as well. This is a good bill. It's a common sense law enforcement bill. Simply states, minor level crime now, local law enforcement can contact ICE to get these people detained, processed, and deported. These people, these criminals that come across that inflict violence on American families, they just get more and more emboldened.
Expired. To the gentleman. The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you. They just get more and more emboldened. And they create larger and more heinous crimes. And that's exactly what happened here in the Laken Riley murder. Mr. Speaker, I encourage all my colleagues, let's get this passed today. Let's get this done. I'll leave you with one other thought, too. I've always heard a saying, there's nothing with any meaningful legislation that happens in this town up here until the American people demand it. And by God, they're demanding that this get passed and we get these criminals out of our country. Thank you, and I yield back.
Gentleman from California is recognized. Reserve. Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Maryland is recognized.
But we have no further speakers, Mr. Speakers. So we'll reserve.
The gentleman reserves. Gentleman from California is recognized. Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from California, Mr. LaMalfa. Gentleman from California is recognized.
Thank you to my good colleague from California as well for leading this charge and being that strong voice. So we seem to have a common California problem anyway on a lot of issues. And reminding people that California is a sanctuary state and some of the first sanctuary cities emanated from California, leading to this problem. And by doing so, Governor Gavin Newsom and the rest of the state is actually defying federal law on enforcing borders and turning over criminal illegal aliens when they capture them and detain them. Lives are being lost because of that. So let me go back in time a little bit so they're not forgotten. Jamil Shah II. Jamil Shah II, at the time a 17-year-old high school student and a promising athlete, shot and killed on March of 2008 near his home in Los Angeles. His assailant, an undocumented immigrant or illegal alien, whatever you want to call it, he was a member of the 18th Street Gang, been released from jail just the day before, prior to this shooting. Later on, he was finally convicted in 2012 and sentenced to death, then commuted by Gavin Newsom. Shah's death led to increasing scrutiny of these policies and hopefully results here today. Let me remind you of Kate Steinle. That one gripped the nation as well. Killed on a pier in San Francisco when an illegal immigrant who shouldn't have been there got a hold of a gun and discharged it and caught poor Kate Steinle. This man was finally acquitted of murder and manslaughter and only put away on fell in possession of a firearm. So this became a focal point in discussions of sanctuary cities as well. We have this opportunity here to not have this happen again and again because we know well, unfortunately, the story of Laken Riley, as that's more fresh in our minds. But we can't go back and forget about people like Jamil Shah, whose father I've met, who was grieving at the time and is still grieving now, Kate Steinle, and so many other names that we're not naming here yet today. We need to do better. Support this legislation. I yield to my colleague. Thank you.
Gentleman from California is recognized. Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Maryland is recognized.
We're prepared to close, Mr. Speaker.
I'm ready to close as well, so I yield to the gentleman. The gentleman from Maryland is recognized.
Can you tell us how much time we have?
The gentleman has 6 minutes remaining.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm sorry that Representative Collins has left. I was just presented with a tweet that he sent out about the New Jersey-born Episcopalian Bishop Marianne Budd, who performed a service as part of the inaugural ceremonies, and apparently he was not pleased with what she had to say, and he wrote, "The person giving this sermon should be added to the deportation list." And I would have asked him whether he was serious about that. Of course, the Episcopalian bishop is a U.S. citizen, but of course, that's very much in the spirit of the times. Reminds me of the period of the Alien and Sedition Acts in 1798, when there was an effort to use the Alien and Sedition Acts, which have been invoked recently by the new president, in order to persecute the political opponents of the administration, as well as to chase down and kick out of the country all of the dangerous French immigrants who were spreading revolutionary propaganda in the country. And a friend of Jefferson's wrote to him, John Taylor, to say how exhausted he was by all of the political fighting and the demonizing of immigrants and the attempt to shut the borders down and to attack political opponents as enemies of the state and so on. And Jefferson wrote him this beautiful letter back. You should check it out online if you can. It's a letter to John Taylor. And in it, he counseled patience. He said, "A little patience, and the reign of witches shall pass over, their spells dissolve, and the people, recovering their true sight, recover the true principles of their government." In the meantime, he said, we're suffering all of the horrors and indignities of the hysteria. But he said, if the game runs against us at home sometimes, as inevitably it will, then, he said, we must have patience, because this is a game where principles are at stake. Our colleagues have spoken up for nothing other than due process. The idea that the bipartisan compromise that has been cemented in law since 1996 should stand, saying that we want the immediate detention and deportation of undocumented people who actually commit crimes. And in an effort to drive a wedge in this body, they now say they want to move from people who've been convicted of crimes, which obviously accords completely with common sense, to people who've just been accused or charged with crimes, even if the charges are dropped, even for offenses as small as shoplifting. In any event, we don't claim somehow that one side or the other is morally righteous and the other is morally wrong. We're trying to have a public policy debate. And the role of public emotion in public policy debates, Mr. Speaker, is an interesting thing. Some people think it's enough to show up and say there's been a terrible event. There's been a sickening murder or rape. Therefore, you must pass our bill, without even reading the bill, without even looking to see what's in the bill. Does it make sense as a matter of public policy? If that were the standard they actually believed in, they would be voting for all of the gun safety legislation they've been rejecting, because every time there's a massacre, whether it's in Connecticut or Florida or Texas or Illinois or any of our communities, we come in and we say, we want what the American people want in public opinion polls, a universal violent criminal background check. We want a ban on military-style assault weapons. There's no reason 18-year-olds should be bearing AR-15s and showing up in classrooms and churches and synagogues with weapons of mass destruction. If it were enough just to appeal to emotion, they would be voting with us. But no, they say, well, that conflicts with their public policy understanding. Well, at the very least, you think they would have the burden of telling us what they do support. But we never hear anything. You don't hear a peep out of them about gun violence because the Second Amendment, as they misinterpret it, is sacrosanct, as well as their NRA support and contributions. That's what they bow down to, is the National Rifle Association when it comes to this policy debate, because they won't advance anything that conflicts with the NRA, even if the Supreme Court says it's perfectly fine. We had a ban on assault weapons for a decade. It was perfectly constitutional. We have the Brady Act. We have a violent criminal background check. But even though expanding it to make it universal would save hundreds or thousands of lives, American citizen lives, every year, they won't touch it. So don't invoke emotion selectively and say everybody's got to go along with what you're saying without even analyzing the policy implications and the constitutional implications if you're not willing to put anything on the table to reduce the sickening death toll for gun violence in America. There's nothing in the world that approaches what we've got here. It's 25 times higher than the EU countries. Dozens of times higher than Japan, Canada, UK, you name it. And yet they pretend as if there's no problem. And yet they seize on an opportunistic bill like this to try to drive a wedge within our Congress and within our people. I hope they do better when we get to the second week of this new administration than freeing violent criminal felons who stormed this Capitol and attacked our police officers, and then bringing forward a bill like this to try to cover up for their complicity with that sickening violence against our constitutional order. I yield back.
The gentleman yields. The gentleman from California is recognized. You have 7 minutes and 15 seconds. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First, in response to my friend, I'd say after the last 4 years in which the Democrats brought the full force of the government to intimidate social platforms, to shut down dissenting opinions, and stifle public debate, I'd be a little more careful about invoking the Alien Sedition Acts. The gentleman offers us gun control as an antidote. We offer criminal control. Get the criminals off the streets, which is exactly what this bill does. And I'm sure that he must be very upset that Mr. Biden pardoned his son for gun crimes. Mr. Speaker, to my Democratic colleagues who've joined Republicans to pass this bill into law, I thank you for standing up to the woke left of your party. That's a hard thing to do, especially when it exposes you to their insults and epithets and threats of political retribution. To the others, I ask how many more laws with names attached to them do we need to pass before you take this crisis seriously? How many American citizens must die at the hands of illegal aliens before we all agree that these tragedies are fully preventable? Must the name of my child or your child be the one attached to an HR number or an S number before Democrats can vote yes on these common sense bills? The fine point of the matter comes down to this. If this bill had been law, Jocelyn Nungari, Sarah Root, Rachel Moran, Laken Riley, and many, many more such victims would be alive today because their killers would have been taken into custody. And under President Trump, they would never have been allowed into our country in the first place. With that, I ask for adoption of this measure and yield back the balance of my time.
Thank you for tuning in to the live show. You know what time it is. It is your boy, Genesis. Yes, we are back, of course. You know what time it is. Well, everybody knows. Well, if you did not know, the Laken Riley's Act has been signed, so it's now a done deal. That was the back and forth that they had, but it's a done deal now. Of course, they have something to talk about, argue
Madam
about.
Crockett, this is a common sense good government amendment.
There we go.
The entire purpose of this amendment is to bring standard ethics language into the committee process to make sure that anybody who is interacting with this committee does not use it or its resources for personal profit. It's basic ethics language. It does not infringe on speech. It does not prevent someone from appearing or advising the committee on general issues or classes of issues which are permissible under the rules and the ethics of the House of Representatives. But it would prevent someone from using the committee and federal resources for personal financial gain. And I want to read the text in the amendment that is really clear about this. It says that folks shall not advise the committee or its members in a paid or unpaid capacity or otherwise interact with the committee or subcommittee on any matter that would benefit the person financially or constitute a conflict of interest. This is not a violation of the Constitution or of free speech. Using federal resources to benefit your own financial interests is not protected speech. Unless, I was trying to figure out while we were on break what my colleagues are referring to. Maybe they're referring to the Citizens United case. Maybe they're referring to protecting the speech of campaign donations. Maybe they're referring to protecting the $250 million in donations that Elon Musk made to Donald Trump in his campaign, and that has given him access not only to the inner circle of Donald Trump's administration, but it's going to land him in office in the White House and pretty much unfettered access to this committee and its resources. So this amendment is designed to make sure he can come here, he can come testify, he can talk about issues that are general issues, but he cannot use this committee as a personal piggy bank to put forward an agenda that would personally profit him or others against the public interest. That is what this amendment is about. That is what we're trying to do, is to make sure that people do not use this committee for personal and private gains. Now, I'm dismayed that in the first organizing committee of this Congress, we can't even agree on the most basic ethical standards for how this committee is going to conduct itself. Language that appears in almost every single government agency, federal, state, local, tribal, also in the private sector. This is about protecting the public interest. This is about making sure that the goals that are supposedly laid out in this rule change that creates these two new subcommittees is really about achieving government efficiency and improvements. And it's about making sure that billionaires who buy their way into the inner circle of Donald Trump do not use this committee and its resources for their own financial gain. And with that, I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back to recognize Ms. Green from Georgia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There's a lot of outrage today about my new subcommittee on DOGE. I want to say I'm honored. Thank you. You see, all the talk about billionaires. Let's talk about George Soros, who has donated hundreds of billions of dollars to Democrats, Democrat PACs, Democrat interests that ripped open our border, invaded our country, have had all types of policies that have directly impacted Americans in the worst ways possible. You know, Elon Musk used to be a Democrat. And I think the problem here is you guys are really jealous. And let's be brutally honest. It's your policies that have run off Democrats. You have run off your own donors. And you ran off the voters in this last election because of the absolute failures that you did to this country. So let's be really clear in what you're trying to do. You're attacking Elon Musk because you're really jealous. You are. You're just really jealous. And Elon Musk, I want to remind you guys, while California is on fire, he is directing his resources there with Tesla trucks and Starlinks to help people and victims that are being impacted right now by the failures of the Democrat leaders in California. No, it's not climate change that is burning down California. It is a failure of how to handle and prevent these types of problems. No water in the fire hydrants, no water in the water reservoirs, not cleaning up the forest floors. So let's be very clear about Democrat policies, Democrat decisions that have run off so many people. And let's talk about what you're trying to do is just attack someone that used to actually support your party and supports your party no more. But let's really talk about this amendment. And it's not an attack on Elon Musk specifically, as it is an attack on Elon Musk and every single taxpayer in this country. It says, no person with a personal financial interest impacted by the decisions of the committee or any subcommittee thereof, including the newly created subcommittee on delivering on government efficiency, shall advise the committee or its members in a paid or unpaid capacity. Think about that. So you don't want taxpayers to have any say in what this subcommittee holds hearings on, talks about things that need to be funded or unfunded, departments that need to be shut down, union employees of the federal government that need to be fired, unions that need to be busted up, waste, fraud, and abuse. If this amendment were to pass, this amendment would directly violate the freedom of speech of taxpayers, of Americans, because this amendment says that no one can have any say to committee members or on the subcommittee of government efficiency. That's what this amendment says. And our job and our role is to serve the taxpayers, to serve the American people, to protect their freedom of speech, to uphold their interest, to protect how their taxpayer dollars are used. And so this is why this committee we can't consider having an amendment like this in our rules, because we'd be violating exactly what we are here to do. It's a complete waste of time. And Mr. Chairman, I oppose this amendment and I yield back. Thank you.
Gentlelady yields back. Chair recognizes Mr. Garcia.
Thank you. I just got to first, that was a lot. And first, I think the people of California and the West absolutely deserve an apology for politicizing fires that are actually killing people right now, and where people are losing their homes, and the idea that somehow you want to politicize those and say that those were caused by crazy conspiracy theories. I don't think anyone should take any advice on how fires are created, certainly by someone that has said space lasers actually create forest fires. And so that deserves an apology to the people of California. And this idea that somehow Elon Musk is going to save us, the richest person on the planet, multiple times over, and that we're arguing about what he can do for this country when we're not actually bringing in people that are actually impacted by the policies of our friends on the other side of the aisle, I think is quite shameful. And the gentlelady from Georgia should apologize.
Any other members seek recognition? Ms. Mace from South Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On this conflict of interest that we have before us today, I'm hearing about conflict of interest, quote, most basic ethics standards, quote, basic ethics, resources for personal profit, making sure financial interests are at stake, et cetera. Mr. Chairman, I find it rich that the same members of Congress who defended the Biden crime family, who are making millions of dollars from international business deals while trading on public office, are now here lecturing us today about conflicts of interest. Like they should just sit right back down. They have no room on this issue. I would love to know if they think Nancy Pelosi trading stocks is a conflict of interest. So, if the Biden family, international business dealings, you're trading off the vice presidency and presidency is not a conflict of interest. I would love to know where they stand on that, Mr. Chairman, because this is ridiculous. We need to work for the American people. We need to get to work fast. There was a mandate in November, on November 5th, to push our country forward, to get out of the worst economy in my lifetime that the left forced upon the American people. They can't afford groceries. They can't afford gas. They can definitely not afford child care. And the education system in this country is down the tubes. Taxes are hurting American families on top of it. We have at least 14 million illegals in this country. Is probably far higher than that. We can't keep count. We don't even know where the 300,000 kids are. And so what they have done to destroy the fabric of the United States of America, everything we were founded on, freedom and liberty, the ability to prosper, to work, live, and retire in the greatest nation in the world, they have destroyed that. And it is our job to get back to the basics. And quite frankly, I don't think government efficiency is enough. I think we're going to have to go much further than that. And in fact, look at dismantling entire departments or even agencies, because it's just the bureaucracy we have created with the deep state of bureaucracy here is hurting our country. It's hurting our national security. We're weaker on the world stage. Our economy is going to be a national security issue in very close order. I was hoping that American families would be able to refi with lower interest rates this quarter on their homes and be able to afford housing. Doesn't look like that's going to happen because of what the Biden-Harris administration has done in the run-up to President Trump swearing in on January 20th. This is un-American. It's disgusting. It's gross. Let's move forward. Let's get these votes done this afternoon. Let's get to work for the American people, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, and I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Any other members seek recognition? Chair recognizes Mr. Higgins from Louisiana.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My colleagues can expect conflict in this committee. There's going to be a lot of conflict. And Elon, Mr. Musk, is absolutely bringing conflict to the United States focus. We are in conflict with the big government machine that has been devouring the wealth and smashing the individual rights, liberties, and freedoms of the American people whom we serve. You think that's funny, young man? Talk to your great-grandchildren, your yet unborn generations that is inheriting the debt that the machine of D.C. has forced upon our country. We are $36 trillion in debt. That's $36,000 billion. Were we to balance the budget and run a $1 billion surplus, it would require 36,000 years to address that debt. And that's not funny. And we're not playing. So you can expect conflict in this committee. And with men like Elon Musk coming in working with our president, who my people elected, you can absolutely look forward to many discussions that will cause wailing and gnashing of teeth across this town that has crippled the future of our country with debt. You should look forward to that conflict, because we'll be saving a generation yet unborn of our country. And that's exactly what we intend to do. I yield the balance of my time to the chair.
Thank the gentleman for yielding. Any other members seek recognition? Seeing none, the question is now on the Stansbury Amendment offered by the gentlewoman from New Mexico. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed signify by saying no. No. In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it, and the amendment is not agreed to.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask for a recorded
A recorded vote is ordered as previously announced. Further proceedings on the question will be postponed. Do any other members seek recognition?
Mr. Chairman.
Chair recognizes Mr. Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have an amendment as well.
The clerk will distribute the amendment to every member. I believe every member has a copy on their desk. The clerk will designate the amendment.
An amendment to the rules of the Committee on Oversight and Government Reform for the 119th Congress is offered.
Thank you for tuning in to the live show. You know what time it is. It is your boy Genesis. Yes, it is going bonkers now that the legend is in the White House. Everybody's acting like they're not happy. They're actually happy because there's so much to talk about right now. Things are happening with so much speed. Executive orders going wild. This man has signed on the first night 42 executive orders with 200 actions on them. And now today he signed more executive orders to declassify JFK, RFK, and MLK's file. Tomorrow morning, well, it's a new day. It's currently 4:58 a.m. in Georgia, East Coast. Sorry, Southeast Coast. Okay. So, if you are, watching from any other place in the United States, by the time you wake up around, say, 9, 10 a.m., you better get ready for so many updates because this weekend and next week, there would be so many news coming out, so much that you would be so choked up. It's going to be a very interesting 4 years to come.
All right, Mr. Wonderful himself, Kevin O'Leary, joins me now. Kevin, great to see you. So, like, the hundreds of billions keep rolling in here. Now you've got potentially $600 billion from the Saudis. What do you make of that?
See what happens when you strip away regulation? That's really, and you stabilize tax. I mean, really, there's two things here. Almost in every of the 11 sectors we enjoy, regulations are being lifted on a federal level, number one. Number two is, with certainty now, or highly likely, the tax rates, corporate tax rates on capital gains, don't go past 21%. How many places on earth give you the largest market on earth, a deregulated environment, and stable taxes at a very competitive rate in the G20? That's why all this capital is coming. I get the politics, but the money's coming because it's a very stable market. And that's so important for other countries to watch. Right now, the number one destination for more than half the invested capital on earth is the United States of America. And that's the way it should be.
And good policy is what makes it that way. Good stuff. Okay, turn to this, Kevin, with me. You got the AI investment announcement we saw yesterday. So it's the beginning, it looks like. Do you see a lot of these private investments coming in the AI space, or do you expect this to get a little broader than just sort of the tech conversation of the moment?
No, I'm going to give you a reality check on all this AI stuff. You can't do AI without data centers, and so we have a lack of them. The problem right now, as you see these announcements about building data centers, these are up to $20 billion per gigawatt. These are expensive projects. There's no power left on the grid to do that. You can't just roll into a state and take a gig of power, which is the equivalent of lighting up 1 million homes every night, without the power bill going up in wherever that state is. And so up 20% for the residences. Of course, nobody wants that. So you have to build your own power. Now, where can you do that? You've heard a lot of hype about nuclear power. That is going to come in about 19 years at a cost of around $50 billion per gigawatt. Versus what you can do right now in natural gas is put that through a turbine and do that for about $2 billion a gigawatt. But however, there's only 4 jurisdictions available for that in North America. Number 1, Texas. Number 2, West Virginia. Number 3, North Dakota. Number 4, Alberta, Canada. That's it. There's nowhere else to put these data centers. So you talk about all this money coming in, trying to find a home. So, you talk about 3 Mile Island, you'll be dead before that gets lit up. So there's a whole lot of work to be done here, just finding places to build data centers, and that's what that money's chasing.
Well, I guess that's why they went to Texas. Step one, we'll see how that pans out. Kevin, I got to ask you about this, though. You've got some competition to buy TikTok. Social media star Mr. Beast says he wants the app. Now, the guy you've been partnering with, who you put your bid in already, he said he's okay, Frank McCord, he's okay with this kind of 50% thing that the president has been talking about. What do you think about that? Do you like what the president's pitching in terms of this structure?
Well, because of the existence of a golden share in ByteDance, which is controlled by Xi himself, the only two that can decide what's going to happen here are Trump and Xi. And so Xi has not yet indicated if he wants to sell it. That's the next step. If he does, everybody's happy with whatever Trump comes back with, as long as it complies with the laws of Congress and the order from the Supreme Court. And the most, not troubling, but difficult part of this is in the 5th and 6th page of that order 2 Fridays ago from the Supreme Court, it specifically outlines not a single line of code can be used from the existing Chinese algorithm. That's 5 billion codes nobody can use. So now it comes back to which group, and I don't care how many people announce this, has the tech to port this over to. And as far as I know, it's only the McCord-O'Leary bid. We have the tech. We've been to the Hill this week talking to senators and congressmen about what we've got. We can move it over without a single line of Chinese code and allow Americans to sequester their own data so there's no leakage. Right. And I'm hoping that's the end of the day why this deal comes to us.
Oh my goodness. Everybody wants to buy TikTok. TikTok is not more on the Google Play Store or the Apple Store. So, as a matter of fact, now phones that have the TikTok app are now getting IB'd. People want to buy the phones. If you have a TikTok app on your phone, if you go on eBay, go check the prices for phones, iPhones that have what is this? iPhone 15 Plus, iPhone 15 Pro Plus, I don't even know what it is. But if you go on eBay right now, you would realize that your phone is worth a lot if you have a TikTok app. If you have the TikTok app on your phone installed, because it's not more on the Apple Store and the Google Play Store. So you might want to get some bread out of that.
Why are you mad at him for telling the truth? Because
I'm not mad.
Because the reality of the
whoa.
situation is Republicans treat Democrats the way Democrats should treat Republicans. I respect Donald Trump up there giving his inauguration speech and telling all of them to their face, y'all ain't pissed.
Yo, it was such a
I don't like none of y'all. Barack Obama walked in, they booed. Booed him. The Clintons walked in, they booed.
That was radio host Charlemagne the God saying he appreciated how President Trump told Democrats Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Barack Obama, Hillary, and Bill Clinton right to their faces at his inauguration that Democrats derailed and damaged America. Joining us now, RNC Youth Advisory Council co-chair. He's CJ Pearson. CJ, it's always a pleasure to have you back on to our show. So, your reaction to this, the media is now saying President Trump is doing more in 3 days than Biden did in 4 years to fix America.
It's absolutely true. And it's good to have, again, a president who's actually coherent, a president who actually knows that he is indeed president. I've got 4 words for you, Liz. Promises made and promises kept. I think just a few weeks ago, I was on your program, Liz, and I said that it was time for DEI to DIE. And in just a few hours, President Trump made it happen, and God bless him for it.
Well, what do you make of President Trump getting rid of DEI, not just in government? He says it's discriminatory, illegal. Bureaucrats waste tax dollars. It fuels more racial hatred, divides America. He's saying that Democrats have corrupted the government with DEI, and he wants meritocracy back. But let's get right to this. He wants to wipe out DEI entirely out of American culture. His executive order has told government agencies to investigate DEI units at private companies and businesses, nonprofits, colleges with over $1 billion in endowments. Trump wants to wipe it out of American culture for good, and he's saying to each federal agency, you got to identify, watch this, up to 9 potential civil investigations into this.
I think it's long overdue and is exactly correct and exactly what we have needed from this president. And it's great to see it. You see many people on the left losing their mind and saying that President Trump is waging a war on diversity. But I look across the federal government. No, he's waging a campaign for meritocracy. I see folks like Emory Washington serving the Department of Energy, folks like Jedidiah Thomas, who is one of the most effective surrogates for President Trump. He's not ridding our government of diversity. He's simply getting rid of the people who can't carry their weight, and that's exactly what we need.
We were talking to HR, people who run HR units at big companies. They say they do nothing all day long. One number said the government spent $124 billion on DEI. We're trying to confirm that number. We know that the Pentagon spent at least $431 million on DEI. Your final word on this, CJ?
Well, if DOJ is looking for any area to cut, they should start with this, and I'm glad they're doing it.
All right, CJ Pearson, great to have you on again.
Ladies and gentlemen, this man has signed so many executive orders that your head would spin. It's now male and female, all right? So ABCDQ plus is not gonna work anymore. DEI out of the window. I mean, a lot of people are gonna go offended, but there's nothing you can do, though. There's nothing you can do.
Let's bring in my friend, Stephen A. Smith, the host of the Stephen A. Smith Show, to discuss. Hey, Stephen A.
Well, first of all, before we even start, congratulations to my buddy for having his own afternoon show. Major props to you. Just because you support Trump don't mean you have to look like him. Don't mean you have to dress like him for crying out loud. That's what you're doing. That's what you're doing right now, Will Kane. But it's okay. Congratulations. It's well-deserved. It's long overdue. And I'm sorry I couldn't make it yesterday for your first show because I was traveling. What's up?
Well, first of all, I don't know that he has patented red, white, and blue. Others are allowed to wear red, white, and blue besides the President of the United States. Secondarily, I just want to say thank you. You have been there with me every step of the way. You put me on First Take. You advocated for the Will Kane Show on ESPN Radio. You were there for the launch of the Will Kane Show on podcast and digital. And you're here now at the beginning of the Will Kane Show. And I always appreciate your support, friend.
No doubt. Well-deserved, my brother.
All right.
Let's do it.
Let me get to this. Speaking of our past, we've had a lot of knockdown, drag-out fights, Stephen A. We've had a lot of conversations kind of around DEI. But you've changed a little bit. I've been noticing you a little bit, some different perspectives coming from you. Is this something you celebrate, or are you highly concerned about the sunset of DEI?
I'm concerned about it. I certainly am not going to celebrate it because I don't like the way I believe the right is handling this particular issue. When you talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, the conversations that you and I have had is far different than the things that I've heard from everybody else. You ask questions and you talk about a merit-based society. That's cool. But there are others on the right that are hiding behind that verbiage to disguise how they're really coming across. When you say diversity, equity, and inclusion, you're basically trying to imply, not you, but I'm talking about some on the right, are trying to imply that everybody that got hired under DEI is that you certainly weren't competent, you weren't qualified. Well, that might be the case, or it might not be. Let's understand that we don't get to ignore why the existence of DEI came to be. It was because of the inequities in the system, the people that weren't hired before, competent individuals from minority communities throughout this country that weren't feel like they were being treated fairly. You and I have had this discussion over the Rooney Rule in sports. Certainly, you would think that you should be able to interview whoever you want. You shouldn't be forced to interview an African-American candidate. Why did the NFL implement that policy? It implemented that policy because of inequities that were exercised by various NFL owners spanning history. All I'm saying is let's not forget that reality, its existence. Why did it come to be to begin with? So when you eradicate the program and then you turn around, let's say, for example, hypothetically, you get rid of DEI at ESPN, or you get rid of DEI at Fox News or any place else. And then you turn around and you got 7, 8, 9 different positions, and all of them are white. You're basically implying that all of those white folks are the best candidates, and we couldn't find anybody from any different community that were competent. That's my concern.
The top personality at ESPN. That is not me complimenting you. It's a fact. You are number one. Yes. Did you get there because of DEI?
No, I don't think so. But
so
I know that much.
But you don't have to worry.
I think a legitimate argument can be made that my inception into this business might have played a role in that. That might have played a role. Absolutely.
But my point is, you don't have to worry. Your life is a testament to merit winning out over the necessity to prioritize skin color. You pointed out that people will be like, well, everybody that was hired over the past 5 years were beneficiaries of DEI. You know, Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas talked about this. That's one of the prices of affirmative action, because some people get something that they might not have earned for their superficial characteristics. Then it's logical to look around and go, well, if you have those same characteristics and you didn't earn it, or you didn't get it for merit, did you not earn it? My point is, DEI actually undercuts people like you who earned it by merit.
And I'm saying to you, That argument can be made in some cases, and in some cases it cannot be. So the way you truly eradicate it, let's say, for example, like you just did, you want to eradicate DEI programs, and then the hiring process is revisited, and 40% of the candidates are African Americans or Latinos or a combination of the both, and 60% of them are white. Nobody's going to have a problem with that. But if 95 to 100% of them are white, from the moment that DEI is eradicated, then you're sending the message that the only reason other folks had those opportunities was because of DEI as opposed to their qualifications. And I'm saying you have to be mindful and careful of making sure that that message is not disseminated, because that's inaccurate, and history has proven that in a lot of different circumstances. That's all I'm saying.
I truly do believe in black Americans to not just survive, but to excel in a system based upon merit. I don't think DEI is necessary. In fact, I think it is cancerous and undercuts their accomplishments. I do want to ask you this, Stephen A. You've made, I'm running out of time, but I do have to ask you this, okay? And that is this, that you told me, and that you voted for Kamala Harris. I don't think, you're somewhat independent, but you have been leaning to the left. Lately, I feel like you're leaning to the right. You told our own Sean Hannity that you're not mad that Donald Trump won. If you had a do-over, Stephen A., would you vote for Donald Trump?
I don't know if I would vote for him because I don't trust that
There you go,
chaos
vote
is
for
not
Trump. You know
going
that.
to reign. I don't like, I don't like, and I don't want to use, I'm not trying to call him an authoritarian or whatever, but the White House, the Senate, the House, Congress, etc. Complete power like that makes me nervous, especially in the hands of somebody like him who can be a bit petty and stuff like that. But I want to be very, very clear. I have voted some Republicans in the past. I would vote for Republicans in the future. I'm not against all. There's a lot of conservative policies that I support, just like there are some liberal policies I support. I'm an independent. My issue was not with the party. My issue was with Trump and how I thought Trump would act. I'm hoping I'm wrong. I'm rooting for him to have a successful presidency, but a successful presidency to me is what benefits America, not him. And if that means voting right, I'll vote right next election, and the election after that, and the election after that. I ain't ashamed to tell you.
I got to leave it here, but I mean, you got to like what's happening in the first couple of days. I think you would take that do-over, Stephen A. I do think you'd take that do-over. We'll find out, by the way. We'll find out. Because people can watch you on the Stephen A. Smith Show. On the Stephen A. Smith Show. Thank you so much, Stephen A.
Oh my goodness. Everybody's leaning right because it's now cool to lean right.
Mike Lee, Senator Lee, great friend of the show. Thanks for coming on. Let me start. Can I start with Bill Melugин's report on the immigration? Promises made, promises kept. Tough on the border, and the deportation of criminals has started right away, Senator Lee, right away, going through the sanctuary city barriers, so-called. What you make of it, sir?
Look, what I make of this is that Donald Trump has shown that he's willing to deliver on campaign promises the American people have been relying on him to deliver, and promises that really are long overdue. This also shows, Larry, just how inexcusable the Biden administration's inaction was. They claimed over and over again, oh, we can't do it for this reason, that reason, or any other reason. This was a willful subversion of America's border security, an intentional weakening of our national security. He left this thing wide open for 4 years. He did so, moreover, after receiving the most secure border any incoming president has had in modern history. And he ruined it. Now, Donald Trump is having to go back almost to the drawing board, as it were, start from square one, and he's already making significant progress. I applaud him for that. Looking forward to what comes after this. No nation can survive as long as it doesn't have defensible borders, and America is no exception.
No, absolutely right on target. I mean, it's interesting to me, Bill Melugin is such a great reporter, and such a great reporter on the immigration story in recent years. Phenomenal stuff. But it is interesting. His point was that Tom Homan and ICE and so forth are going after what Melugin called the worst of the worst, the toughest criminals. They've gone into a half a dozen cities: Boston, Denver, Philly, Atlanta, Seattle, Miami. Tough cities, cutting through the sanctuary city part. And let me just add, Senator Lee, as you probably know, the plan is 10,000 troops will gather at the border. 1,500 American troops are already down there to close the border. So what you make of all that? I mean, they're not the worst of the worst get hit the hardest right away.
Yes, the worst of the worst. Look, he's going about this exactly the right way. You triage this. Biden created so many problems with his open borders, problems that have resulted in death, destruction, suffering, and theft, among other problems for the American people. So President Trump's right to start where he's starting. And I suspect that the folks from Tren de Aragua, that awful, notorious Venezuelan gang, are going to be at the receiving end of this, in addition to so many others. So this is going to continue. Our hope and expectation is that in some cases, some of these folks will have enough presence of mind to realize it might make sense for them to leave on their own. For those that don't, they will find out the hard way. They're at the find out end of the mess around stage,
Right.
we might say.
The find out end. I like that very much. Another point, another headline, Senator Lee, front page Wall Street Journal today. An anxious federal workforce bids goodbye to job stability and remote work. It's almost tragic that we're going to ask federal employees to come to work. That's a tragedy. A second tragedy is there's too many of them. And a third tragedy is DEI is dead, Senator Lee. Now, I know you've worked on all these issues. Looks like this, too, promises made, promises kept from Mr. Trump. This, too, is happening.
Yeah, it's interesting, Larry. We worked a lot of this out in the 1860s. Fought a civil war and thereafter adopted the Civil War amendments, including the 14th Amendment, which prohibits government from treating people differently on the basis of race. Roughly a century later, we adopted a series of statutes, including the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which prohibits, among other things, racial discrimination and sex discrimination in the workplace. And here we find ourselves many decades later having to go back to those massive victories and still fight them again. Better late than never, but not a moment too soon for Donald Trump to come on board and for his administration to say, it's immoral, it's illegal, and when government does it, it's unconstitutional to discriminate on the basis of race. This should have been the case all along. I'm so glad that President Trump came along and is ready to fix it, but the American people are better off as a result of it. There just is not a good reason, not legally, not constitutionally, not morally, to discriminate on the basis of race.
Hang on a second. I've got some Trump tape, what he said at Davos. Let's see. Roll this tape. Senator, take a listen to what he said today.
My administration has also begun the largest deregulation campaign in history, far exceeding even the record-setting efforts of my last term. In total, the Biden administration imposed $50,000 in additional regulatory costs on the average American household over the last 4 years. I have promised to eliminate 10 old regulations for every new regulation, which will soon put many thousands of dollars back in the pockets of American families.
Senator Lee, of course, music to your ears, music to my ears, but between Mr. Trump and OMB director-to-be Russ Vought, very dear friend of mine, I work with him, and the Doge brothers, Elon Musk and so forth, they want to, if I read it right, sir, they want to disempower the regulatory state, really the socialist. They want to undermine it, and they want to use Supreme Court. You know all about this, constitutional expert. Two decisions, right? Chevron deference and EPA versus West Virginia. The Supreme Court basically has said, go ahead, because the regulators, the alphabet agencies, have gotten way too big for their britches. So this is all part of that follow-through, it seems to me.
It's all part of the follow-through, and it's leading to someplace even better, even greater. We have to remember that as great as West Virginia v. EPA and the Loper-Bright case undoing Chevron deference are, it's still not finished. We're still not finished until we end the barbaric and ultimately, I believe, the unconstitutional practice of lawmaking by executive bureaucrat fiat.
Right.
I keep these two stacks of documents in my Washington. One of them is a few inches tall, a few thousand pages long. The laws passed by Congress last year. The other tends to be about 13 feet tall every year. It's the Federal Register. The federal regulations, as they're promulgated, add up to this 100,000 page per year behemoth of a document. Those are laws. They can throw you in jail. They can result in millions of dollars in fines. They can shut down your business if you don't comply with them. And yet they're not passed by anyone you can fire as a voter. They're not passed by elected representatives. They're passed by unelected bureaucrats. That contravenes both the spirit of the Constitution and the letter, I believe, of Article 1, Section 7, which says you cannot make a law except by passing it first through the House and the Senate, then submitting it to the president. We need to reinstate the Constitution. We can do that by, among other things, enacting reforms like the REINS Act, which would require Congress to have the final say before those can be reinforced. Not only does natural law, not only does the spirit of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence call on us to do this, but the Constitution itself, I believe, requires it, and the American people certainly deserve it. They're drowning under $4 trillion of compliance costs every year. This is unacceptable.
Yeah, and all these regs essentially provide the cover for more government spending, more federal spending, and even more federal regulating. Last one, Senator Lee, have some fun here, but it's a very important topic. I know I want to ask you about the One Big Beautiful Bill, but my friend and yours, Steve Forbes, the great Steve Forbes, okay, who was a fabulous economics thinker, he's really campaigning for a capital gains tax cut in whatever form the tax issue is, one big beautiful bill or a second bill, or maybe extend the tax cuts in the first bill and then move on to 2.0 in the second bill. The capital gains tax, which would boost investment and always pays for itself with higher revenues. Let's see, it's 20% plus 3.8 in the Obama tax, so that's 23.8%. Why not knock it down to 15% and put that alongside a 15% corporate tax rate for domestic production? You know, Forbes likes the flatness of those tax rates. What do you think, Senator? I'm just putting this out there, and I know you could socialize this among your colleagues. Why capital gains tax? More growth, more investment, more revenues, lower deficits.
Yes. Look, I strongly suspect, and you can probably confirm this, if we were to do that, we would have more revenue, not less.
Yes.
We've got to go back to looking at our tax code as performing a functional task, a practical task, namely funding the government. If that is our goal, which it is and must be first and foremost, rather than social engineering, we would do exactly this kind of thing. Remember back in the late 20s when Calvin Coolidge wanted to overhaul the federal tax system, which was much less bad than it is now. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce and all the traditional skeptics from the news media, liberal then as they are now, not quite as much then probably, they all said doom and gloom would befall us. You know what happened? We had more revenue than ever, more revenue than we knew what to do with. We paid off the debt. Not only was the budget balanced, but we paid off the existing debt. This is the kind of thing that can happen when we look functionally at the tax code as a means by which to fund the government rather than through social engineering to try to redistribute wealth. When you do that, you bring in more revenue. It's better for everyone, rich and poor, old and young. Everyone benefits from this, and I hope we move in that direction.
100%. Music to my ears. By the way, I was there for the Coolidge tax cuts. I helped Secretary of Treasury Mellon draft the original copy. No, I'm just kidding, of course. Senator,
that was good of you, of course, as you did with Grover Cleveland.
Yes, Cleveland.
Oh man, I'm having too much fun tonight. Y'all wilding in the comment. Whew. Okay. Yo, you know what time it is? Look, it is 5:26 a.m. And then, all right, let's do one more.
I declared a national energy emergency, and it's so important, national energy emergency to unlock the liquid gold under our feet and pave the way for rapid approvals of new energy infrastructure. The United States has the largest amount of oil and gas of any country on earth, and we're going to use it.
After scores of executive orders from the Biden administration restricting access to Alaska's vast resources, it was 67 executive orders, I think, to be exact. President Trump restoring common sense to U.S. energy production.
Yeah, we back.
And the last frontier has a lot of that.
Joining us now is House Natural Resources Committee member, Alaska Congressman
Nick Begich. Congressman, great to see you. Thank you for being here. Congratulations on being a member of Congress. Good to have you here in your freshman exposure as a congressman. Let's talk about Alaska's stake in all of this, which is huge. You have ANWR, of course, the natural preserve, which a very tiny, small part of will be used to explore and drill for oil. You have the Natural Petroleum Reserve that was started way back in the 1920s. All of this has been basically untouchable during the Biden administration. When are people going to be able to get in there and start drilling?
Well, I think this starts immediately. What we saw with the Trump administration's broad executive order is a mandate to Alaska and a message to America's energy producers. Alaska is open for business. Alaska is a cornerstone to drill, baby, drill. And we are thrilled to have the opportunity to responsibly develop Alaska's resources again, not just for the benefit of Alaskans, but for the benefit of everyone in America.
Well, this is, and speak to that, because this is something that President Trump was touching on today. If you raise production, one, it's energy security is our national security and also our foreign policy. But if you're lowering the price, you are lowering inflation. And it just provides a stable foundation economically for the entire nation.
You're 100% right, Dagan. I mean, at the end of the day, if you want to lower prices, you have to lower the energy inputs for those prices. Energy works its way into everything, whether you're transporting goods or you're driving to the store to buy those goods, you're driving to work, you're coming home from picking up the kids. Energy works its way into virtually every cost that we have. So if you can lower the cost of energy by increasing production, you're going to lower the cost of living for all of America. And so that's why energy production is so important. The Biden administration dramatically reduced the amount of federal leasing that was going on. And we have vast energy stores on federal lands. A lot of that is in Alaska. In fact, the USGS estimates that there's more undiscovered oil and gas potential in Alaska than any other state in the entire country. And yet here we had the Biden administration doing everything they could, right up until the last minute, to stop America from being able to access our vast energy resources. And thankfully, under President Trump, he's ready to unlock Alaska.
Biden extended the oil and gas leasing ban in Alaska's northern Bering Sea. This was right at the very end of his term. He was just busy trying to crush Alaska and jobs.
Yeah. By the way, he also prevents the EPA from using climate change as an emergency excuse to stop any projects. So that's out the window as well. He just signed that today. I mean, order after order after order that's going to be a boon not only to Alaska, but to the whole country. Congressman, great to see you. Thank you very much. Good times ahead.
Good times ahead, y'all. I don't get it when people come to the comments section and say, whoa, you were this, you were that. And you're watching the show. Just enjoy the show, dog. Enjoy the show, dog. Just enjoy the show.
Breaking news just coming into us here at CNN. A judge says he will block President Trump's executive order ending the constitutional right to birthright citizenship. CNN's Joan Biskupik is following these developments for us and joins me now. So, Joan, some pretty clear language from this judge.
Definitely, Erica, and it was just a few minutes ago I was there with you on set saying the hearing had just started, but also saying that this is a really steep hill for the Trump administration to climb to try to enforce this executive order against birthright citizenship. And what the judge just said today from the bench is, I have been on the bench for over 4 decades. I can't remember another case whether the question presented was as clear as this one. And he said that the birthright citizenship executive order that Donald Trump signed within hours of taking the oath of office for the second time, it is blatantly unconstitutional, and he's going to temporarily block that order. So first of Donald Trump's many missives that he took on Monday and that he took on Tuesday, this is the first one that's been blocked, but it's also the one that is, frankly, at this point, Erica, predictable, because this order that would negate more than a century's century of protection for anyone born in the U.S. To become a citizen it really does fly in the face of precedent, Erica.
Joan, really appreciate it. Thank you.
Sure.
Let's discuss this and much more with Don Bacon of Nebraska, the Congress.
So here goes this conversation, okay? Some people would say, I mean, the 14th Amendment settles all of this stuff. But Trump wants to make an amendment, another amendment. So it's like he is saying he wants to block the birthright citizenship. What he means is if you're here on tourism or you're here on a student visa and you're pregnant and you have a baby here, you don't have a green card or you don't have a United States citizenship, it's like, are you supposed to get citizenship for the baby that you give birth to in the United States? Some people would say no, because it doesn't happen anywhere else. In Europe, it doesn't happen. In Australia, it doesn't happen. Matter of fact, in Australia, you have to have like permanent residence or citizenship to make your child have the status of citizenship if you do give birth in Australia. But here, you could just come here for shopping and you're 8 months pregnant, and once you wait here and you have a baby, automatically your child becomes a United States citizen. But in fact, you could cross the border illegally, and once you step your feet on this great land on the United States soil and you have your baby automatically becomes a United States citizen. You may still be illegal, but your child would have the United States citizenship status. So this is what Trump is saying. He's not saying that if you have green card or if you have United States citizenship and you have a baby, your baby would not have a United States citizenship status. No, it's saying if you're here illegally and you have a baby, or you're here on student visa or tourist visa or whatever, and you do have a baby, no, your baby would not have a United States citizenship status. But people want to block it, especially the Dems and the people that wash collard greens in the bathtub.
Joining me now from Capitol Hill. Congressman, good to have you with us. So I hope that you could hear Joan in your ear there. The breaking news that we're just getting is that this was a steep hill, as Joan put out, but the judge there saying that it is blatantly unconstitutional and has now blocked President Trump's executive order to end birthright citizenship. I'm just curious your reaction to that.
I suspect it is unconstitutional. The Supreme Court's ruled on this decades and decades ago. I assume it's probably going back to the Supreme Court. But I think if the president wants to get this resolved the way he wants to, we'll have to require a constitutional amendment, I believe. This has been ruled on many years ago, decades ago, and I think we're probably going down the same path.
How much support do you think there would be in Congress to take a look at it?
Well, I think when the 14th Amendment was done, I don't think people assumed that a lot of folks would travel here to have babies, to have citizenship, and I know that's exaggerated, but it does happen. So I think there's probably going to be some support for trying to revise what the 14th Amendment did. As for myself, I'd rather be a good listener for a while, take the pros and cons, but this will probably be ruled unconstitutional by the Supreme Court. And if we want to fix it, it will have to be a constitutional amendment.
A federal judge has rejected President Donald Trump's executive order.
Right. I mean, I guess Trump knew this wasn't going to pass. He just wanted to try it. And now that this is in the air, it may not pass this 4 years, but eventually it is going to happen that you cannot just come to the United States and have a baby and expect the baby to be an American citizen. It's going to happen. Somebody starts with an idea. Now Trump has put the idea out here in the world, and you can't take an idea back. He's shown Americans that maybe we should not give just anybody citizenship for their kids just because they have their kids here. even though they're illegals or they're here on student visa or tourist visa or whatever. He started something right here. It may not happen this 4 years, but it will eventually come to pass.
Banning birthright citizenship. The judge called the order blatantly unconstitutional and says he's issuing a temporary restraining order to block it. Now, the lawsuit challenging the order was brought by the state of Washington, Oregon, Illinois, and Arizona. And more than a dozen other states have also sued, trying to stop the ban. If Mr. Trump got his way, most children born in the US to foreign parents wouldn't automatically be American citizens. It is part of the new White House immigration crackdown. But birthright citizenship is currently guaranteed by the 14th Amendment in the US Constitution. And as of right now, it remains very much the law of the land. I want to bring in Corey Brettschneid, who's a professor of political science at Brown University and author of the book The President and the People, 5 Leaders Who Threatened Democracy and the Citizens Who Fought to Defend It. Brett, you're just the person we...
Of course, I mean, just like I said earlier on, the 14th Amendment solidifies all of this argument. However, like you heard, if you want to make that happen, if you want to enact that law, you would have to do a constitutional amendment. And that is most likely going to happen. It may not happen from now to 2028, but most likely would happen from like 2028 to 2032, especially if a Republican win the executive power as well, which it looks like, because, I mean, let's face it, the Democrat has no powerhouse. Who do they have to run for 2028 executive power, which is the presidency? Who, Gavin Newsom? I don't think so. AOC? Definitely not. Who? Maybe Josh Shapiro? Maybe Josh Shapiro or Fetterman? Maybe. But without those two guys, Fetterman or Josh Shapiro, the Republican Party has Ron DeSantis, J.D. Vance, Vivek, RFK, Tulsi Gabbard. There's so many people the Republican Party can just J.D. Vance. So it's most likely the Republican Party is going to win in 2028 and 2032. You're most likely going to get a constitutional amendment.
We need to try and make sense of what is going on here. But let's start with first of all, Corey, what this pushback, this breaking news, right? Breaking news, this judge rejecting Trump's executive order. A sign of things to come, you think, Corey?
Well, it's hard to predict. It's certainly the right thing to do. And I couldn't agree more with what this judge says. This is an blatantly unconstitutional executive order. The 14th Amendment says very clearly, if you were born in the United States, you are a citizen. And so by executive order, you can't revoke the Constitution. And yet that's what Trump is trying to do here. Now, why would he do such a thing? I think it's part of his authoritarian playbook, his wannabe authoritarian playbook, to say, hey, I'm the president. I don't have to follow the Constitution. I could essentially revoke it with an executive order. And I dare you, the Supreme Court, which ultimately will decide this, to defy me.
And Corey, it's not so much why you would do at this point, but just for our viewers around the world, can he do it? Can he, with a stroke of a pen, basically change the Constitution?
Absolutely not. The way the system is supposed to work and the law works is that the Constitution is the highest law of the land. And an executive order can't just say, hey, I don't like this part of the Constitution. For instance, he couldn't have an executive order that just revoked the First Amendment, guaranteeing the freedom of speech. And yet he is doing it. And the people who are going to decide whether or not he can, as a matter of course, get away with it are the Supreme Court. And that includes 3 people who he's nominated and who he regards as really his judges. Now, what should they do? Absolutely, they should say this is unconstitutional. They should push back as hard as they can. And even if they don't, even if they...
Here, you have a commander-in-chief who has sent and deployed guards to the southern border to secure the homeland. Here you have a man trying to cut down federal hiring and to put back money into the American pocket. Here you have a man who is saying that come build your companies in the United States and we're going to give you large tax cuts so we can get jobs for Americans. Here you have a man who is making deals, stopping wars. Drill, baby, drill. And for some reason, the left, the Democrats, still don't understand that this is probably the greatest commander in chief the United States has ever had. They tried to stop him, they indicted him, they raided his home. He just never quits. He keeps coming back. He's like a roach. You know when you kill a roach and they don't die, you flush them down your toilet, they crawl back up, they just never go away. That's what Trump is. He never goes away. He stays, he fights. And now he is your 47th president. They try to tarnish his image. They try to make him look like he's a bad person. But American people are like, we don't buy that. He had 2 assassination attempts on his life. Americans said, oh, shoot. I would be voting for a man that actually got shot in the ear. I wanted to say ear. I said ear. And he got up and he said, fight, fight, fight. This is the motherfucker I'm voting for. I don't give a damn what y'all talking about. And here you have it. He is the commander-in-chief. And you can cry and say, Genesis is not American. Oh no, he wasn't born here. Oh no. Oh no. First of all, I got my first green card because you have to get your 2 years green card and then you get your 10 years green card and then you, after 5 years, you can then apply for citizenship. My first green cards, I got them under Trump, okay? But I'm a citizen now, so you can cry and say, Genesis, go back home and do that, do this and do that. I came into the United States legally. I went through Homeland Security. I went through USCIS. I studied. I became a United States citizen because I love the United States. I respect the United States. I wanted to be a part of the United States. I am a part of the United States. You can cry in your basement or you can enjoy the show. 2 things you can do. Cry in your basement or enjoy the show. That's all you can do, dog. Just enjoy the show, dog. Don't be out here crying and doing Nobody cares, bro. Nobody cares, okay? Be a patriot and love your country. I've met Americans and they're going to say, well, if I had money, I'm going to leave this country. I'm like, bro, you think you want to, especially brown skinned folks, they're going to be like, man, my dream is to make so much money and go back to Africa. I'm like, bro, you can't survive, yo. You better enjoy your Chick-fil-A, enjoy your McDonald's, and your slushy Wendy's. Enjoy it, because you ain't going to be surviving in no goddamn Ghana or Nigeria. I tell you that much. You can't survive, though. Enjoy your McDonald's. Just enjoy your McDonald's and realize that you have been born in the greatest nation on earth and respect it. Take advantage of it. Stop bad mouthing the privilege God gave you. You'll be out here talking about, yeah, United States ain't, yeah, this ain't what people think it. Nah, man, bro, just enjoy the privilege. Just enjoy the privilege and thank God for your life, for being born here. Okay?
They bow to this wannabe authoritarian. The fact is, legitimately, it should not stand. The Constitution stands above any act of a president.
So how do you think then, Corey, is he going to navigate these legal challenges? Because there is an argument playing out, and I'm not sure if there's much truth to this, maybe you can flesh this out for us, that the Trump team may try to argue a new reinterpretation of the clause subject to jurisdiction of the United States, right? Flesh this out for us. What are the chances here? What will the argument be on that part of the statement?
That's absolutely right. And there's a case, for instance, called Laken Riley Act that says, look, there are exceptions to this idea that being born in the United States makes you a citizen, but they're very narrow. They include, for instance, children of ambassadors, or at the time, given the very different setup that we had in the United States.
Here we go.
That was the exception anyway, and there was an exception in some cases too for Native Americans. But that case, Laken Riley Act, made it clear at the same time that absent those very narrow exceptions, there's a broad protection for people born in the United States as citizens. Now, what he's going to try to do is really make it up and say that this language of jurisdiction doesn't apply if there are children of undocumented people in the United States. That is not a good argument. It's not one that serious legal scholars respect, but it might be one that the court goes along with, unfortunately.
Corey, appreciate it. I have a feeling you and I will be talking quite a bit.
All right, so I'm gonna pin. Oh shoot, who deleted his comment? Oh my goodness. I'm still gonna read it anyway. So he said, "My taxes are paying for you and your daughter's food. Let her know if she needs any food to let me know. Having a dad that doesn't work is really scary." All right. I'm gonna put my Cash App in the chat since you want to save my daughter. She's actually hungry. She needs some food, my guy. So I'm gonna put my Cash App in there. So you can help us. Please help us, my brother. We need food, okay? But I know you can't help because you're actually broke and you're in your basement watching this show. But I'm gonna put my Cash App in there because we're actually hungry right now, though. Okay. Let me make sure the Cash App is nice because you're gonna make an excuse that you can't see where to actually donate to the channel. So I will put my Cash App right there, bro. Because we're actually hungry, bro. Because I don't work. I ain't got nothing, bro. Here we go. Boom. There we go. Make sure that guy is not blocked. Local things, please do not block that guy. That rich man that wants to save my daughter. Please save my daughter, bro. Okay, save my daughter. All right. There goes my Cash App. Save my daughter. But you can't because you ain't got nothing, my dog. You ain't got nothing. It's like you're watching from your mom's basement. You ain't have no responsibility. But you want to save my daughter. Children. Okay. So, what do we have here? Should we do one more? All right, let's do one more. I've been saying one more for like what? Let me see. I'm waiting for your Cash App, rich man that wants to save my daughter.
All right, welcome back. We are broadcasting live. We are in our nation's capital. President Trump has laid out an ambitious agenda for a second term. Now planning to tackle the border crisis, economic ruin, countless other disasters that Joe Biden, Kamala Harris left behind. How does Congress plan on enacting Trump's agenda? Here to weigh in, we continue with Speaker Johnson, joined by House Majority Leader Steve Scalise, House Majority Whip Tom Emmer, and House GOP Conference Chair Lisa McClain. Congratulations. Good to see you. How are you all?
Great.
Okay. So nobody's going to get everything they want, Steve. We've been friends a long time. Do we agree on the fundamentals? In other words, you all win together, the country wins together, or we all lose together. There's no in between.
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, you can see President Trump's focus is so much sharper. He really recognizes, you know, he was spared by God to get to this moment.
Facts.
And we have unified government. We have an opportunity that you don't get often. We've got to make this work. And if you do, and we're talking about the same things, by the way, we're all talking about lowering energy costs, getting rules and regulations under control, securing America's border, making sure we don't have a tax increase so we can get our economy moving again and lower inflation. Those are all things we talked about during the campaign. President Trump talked about them. We talked about them. So there is no daylight between us and President Trump. You know, and if you go back to 2017, there was a little bit of a difference between the president and Congress. You don't see that today. We're in sync. We're moving together. We had a great meeting at the White House today with President Trump, and he's ready to go, and we're ready to go to deliver on that agenda.
Well, you were there for 3 hours today, right? Yeah. And you had a meeting, just you and Majority Leader Thune and the president. Right. Then you brought in the leadership. How did that go today?
It was great. Vice President J.D. Vance was there as well. And we talked about the agenda. We talked about the importance of unity and how we're all energized to get this agenda done. And the president's excited. We can really see and feel the energy that the American people feel. I mean, something has changed in Washington, and we had to bring America back. President Trump represents that. He's a symbol of that to people around the country. A strong America again. And you know what? It's good for us, and it's good for everybody, all freedom-loving people around the world. And you're going to see a sea change like that around the globe.
Big part of your job is going to be to keep everybody together. How do you plan to make that work?
Well, the same way we did it last time. The last 2 years, we had 222 members. And everybody wants to focus on the fact that it's a small majority. Sean, it's a majority.
Yeah.
We have the majority.
Good point.
And what I want to point out is that with 222, 221, and many times during the last Congress with less than that, because members have lives outside of here and they got to deal with illnesses and different things, we did it with less numbers. This group, the beauty of the Republican Party and these members, these men and women who have been sent here, they're fighting for their districts. And sometimes it doesn't look pretty because they're going to have disagreements, et cetera. But I'm here to tell you, under Mike's leadership and this whole group, we're going to get the job done at the end of the day. Failure is not an option.
There you go.
Okay, so I appreciate that.
They're literally promising the American people that they're going to get the job done. Same with, what's his name? Tom Homan. He says, we're going to get the job done regardless. You cannot stop us from getting this work done. We have been given a mandate by the American people, and we have to deliver to the American people. So you can cry Hail Mary, but the Republicans, they've proven themselves to be capable and ready to get the work done. Everything Trump promised, he's almost accomplished. Like, everything he promised during the campaign trail, he's almost done with it. He said he was going to free J6ers. You can hate it. You may not agree with him, but he's done it already. He said he was going to seal the border. You may not like him, but he's done it already. He said he was going to get other countries to invest in the United States. EU is investing millions of dollars into the United States. The Saudis, they're investing billions of dollars into the United States. And Trump is saying he wants to make sure they make it $1 trillion. This is his what? Fourth night? You know what I mean? Like, fourth night? And you guys are like, what are you doing? This is why people voted for him. Promises made, promises kept. You can hate, but this is what the American people voted for.
I'll go back to you, Mr. Speaker. The House and Senate have very different rules. In the Senate reconciliation, you have to meet a lot of criteria to get that through. That means there's got to be a lot of coordination between you and the majority leader to get the language right. Does that hurt your ability to get it through the House? You want one bill. I know that a lot of senators, when they met with Donald Trump, they were pushing very hard for two bills. I don't care if it's one bill or two bills, as long as you get it done quickly, especially on the economy, because that'll impact all of you. If you all want to be reelected, the economy better be in better shape.
Yes, and you know, there's more Republicans in the majority in the Senate than there are in the House for the first time in a long time. So we have a more complicated equation to work out here and a smaller margin, but we will get it done. Reconciliation is the mechanism that allows us to do this in a partisan way, so that it's Republican priorities that we squeeze into this. The reason the president talked about the one big beautiful bill, and the reason we talk about it as well, is because that's the most efficient and effective way to get it done. And if we stay on the aggressive timetable that we're on right now, and we've been working on this for almost a year, preparing for this moment.
If you pass that one big beautiful bill, you pass it in the House, it gets sent over to the Senate.
Yep.
What do you think happens there?
I think we get it done by the end of April or certainly by Memorial Day.
Will the Senate, will they mark it up and you go into conference, or will they try to, separate it into two bills?
Well, if we're going to go for speed, we have to be closely coordinated, both chambers, and we are. I mean, I think the House Republicans and Senate Republicans are working as closely now, probably maybe that they ever have. And the reason we were at the White House today to begin the first day, I mean, they're literally, they're unpacking boxes at the Oval Office today. And the president hosted us because we don't have any time to waste. And it's serious business. And it was a great meeting. There's a lot of cooperation right now, and we're going to continue that.
He's been working. I live down in Florida, and I can tell you, because I talk to people around him and I talk to him, the guy does not stop working.
No.
He doesn't stop.
He doesn't stop
This
talking
is what we
or
voted
working.
for.
I've talked to him every hour on the 24-hour day clock. Congresswoman, congratulations to you. Great to see you. Let's get your thoughts on one bill, two bills. Does it matter? How quickly? And how do you keep a small margin together?
Well, I think the beauty is we all agree at the same principle. We have to deliver to what for the American people. They sent us a mandate, as Speaker Johnson said, and it's our job to fulfill that mandate, and we will fulfill that mandate. I think right now we're sitting at one bill. But at the end of the day, the American people and President Trump, we care about getting results. That is more important than anything. And President Trump has been very clear on that, this is the result I want. We prefer one bill in the House. We've been clear about that. And I think as we stand right now, we're going to put one bill on the floor, and we'll be very successful doing it.
Let me ask all four of you the same question. Republican Party, all the years I've been in talk radio, believe it or not, I started before Speaker Johnson was born in 1987. And we've talked about limited government and greater freedom. We talk about eliminating waste, fraud, and abuse. Every year it comes up. It never happens. And if you reduce the rate of increase, they call it a cut, and you're stealing from grandma and grandpa, and you want them to eat dog food and cat food and die, and some Republican lookalike is going to push them off a cliff. Okay. Now you have something called DOGE, the new department, government efficiency, Elon Musk, smart guy. He believes he can cut $2 trillion. And my question for everybody in this room, are you ready to really reduce the size of government by $2 trillion so that we stop robbing from our children and our grandchildren? Is this the party of limited government?
Absolutely. Yes.
Yes? And when you're going to cut the farm budget, and then you're going to cut the Department of Education and block grant money to the states at a lower rate, you're willing to take that stand and risk re-election?
Yeah. Well, because it's going to do right by the American people, and they will see the results of that. I mean, we are the party of limited government. We want to scale down the size and scope of government. It's too big. It does too many things. It does almost nothing well. And Elon is coming to recognize that. But we've been talking about this for a long, long time. And we have pages and pages of cuts we're prepared to engage in. We're working on the consensus so that every district and every Republican gets on board with that. And we're going to deliver.
Think of all the slush funds, Sean. You know, the Inflation Reduction Act, that created the inflation that we see because it was trillions of new spending.
Did you hear the Democrat doing interviews like this? No. Trump has been doing interviews since he got sworn in. Every single day, there's been something happening. He's been working nonstop. The media is like, what is going on? He's inviting them into the Oval Office. It's like, where has this man been for the past 4 years? Well, he's back. Now you would see what competence looks like. You want to know what actual work looks like? This is what it looks like.
The EV mandate. People don't want to buy the cars. You get $7,500 that somebody who's driving a pickup truck has to give to somebody who wants to go buy an electric vehicle. You can't even find a charging station for the thing. There's billions of dollars sitting in a slush fund that we're going to go take back and give to the taxpayer of America. Get rid of those things altogether. So it's not just about reducing spending. It's about getting rid of some of this waste that's out there in government. We're going to do that in the reconciliation bill.
Why would we make Ford lose $4.5 billion to make cars that their customers don't want? When you have Tesla, if you want to, I'm pro-choice in this sense. You want an electric, you want a hybrid, you want a gas-powered vehicle, have at it. I'm not buying your global warming crap when you're flying around the country and the world in your private jet. Thank you for the lectures. We don't need it. And let the free market determine that, Congressman.
I totally agree. And back to your question about you got Doge, everything else. Would it surprise you, Sean, because it doesn't get reported, the men and women that make up the Republican conference here in the U.S. House of Representatives, this is what they came for. They came to solve the deficit that we run on an annual basis of $1.7 to $2 trillion. They came to get the balanced budget and then start to pay off the debt so our kids aren't saddled with our excess.
That's word.
Yeah. The beauty of President Trump is he comes to this presidency with some unconventional, out-of-the-box thinking and ideas. That's very different than what we've seen under the previous administration. And I think it's going to take unconventional thoughts and policies to get us out of the situation that we're in right now. And that's what we're excited about.
I think this Congress, if you enact this Trump agenda, everyone watching in this audience knows what it is. You can be the most transformational Congress in history. We've not balanced the budget since Newt Gingrich was Speaker. I did it 5 times.
Yeah.
All right, we'll take a break. Good to see you all.
This is what competence looks like. You can argue with it, you can dread it, but this is what the next 4 years is going to look like. Transparency, okay? You're going to see what's going on at every corner, okay? There would be no hidden spot. He is going to be transparent. His colleagues would be transparent with you. Congressmen, the senators, they're going to be transparent. And this is why our politicians, the leaders, should come out here to have conversations with us. It's not just hiding and saying we're working hard to bring the hostages home. How? Where? What are you doing? We're working hard to bring down prices. What are you doing to bring down prices? Anyway, some people saying, well, how is deportation going to lower prices of homes and groceries? Here is a bill, well, an executive order that Trump signed. Check this out. So this is the White House website. Okay, this was probably 2 days ago. It says, fact sheet. All right. President Donald J. Trump delivers emergency price relief for American families to defeat the cost of living crisis. Oh my goodness. Of course, this won't come up. Anyway, let me get you another article so we can get to see the white screen. Let's see. Executive order, guys. He's not playing around. He's doing what the people elect. Let's see if I could get. All right, let me see. Hope this doesn't have that transparent screen. Is it? Oh my goodness. All right. Let's check this out. All right, here we go. Oh. They don't want us to enjoy this. They don't. All right. I think I found an article from CNN. That should be better. Alrighty. So Trump says he can cut the cost of buying a home. Here's the reality. Of course, CNN. Here we go. Here we go, CNN. After taking office earlier this week, President Donald Trump ordered emergency price relief for Americans on housing costs and other living expenses. Many Americans are unable to purchase homes due to historical high prices, in part due to regulatory requirement that alone accounts for 25% of the cost of construction. Constructing a new home, according to recent analysis, an executive action signed by Trump on Monday read. I mean, the fact that he signed an executive order for emergency price relief. I mean, isn't this the type of commander in chief you want, who actually wants great things for Americans, who want to bring down prices of homes, groceries? Isn't this what you want? And you're still going to argue and say, well, the prices are not down yet, but it's been 4 nights. This man has been the commander in chief for 4 nights. And you have been seeing actions, nothing but actions. If this doesn't give you some sort of peace of mind that you have someone who actually thinks about the people who voted for him and wants to do great things for them, wants to prove them right, he already declassified JFK, MLK, RFK's files. Of course, that's not going to lower housing prices, grocery prices, but he said he was going to do that, and he did it. That is promises made, promises kept. He said it was going to free J6ers. You may not like it, but he did free J6ers. He said it was going to lock down the southern border. He sent troops, about 1,500 guards, to the southern border on the day he got sworn in. Everything he said on the campaign trail, he's doing exactly what he says. You may say, well, I don't agree with what he's doing, but he's doing exactly what he campaigned on. When was the last time Americans elected a president who actually is doing exactly what he campaigned on? When was the last time? The politician said on campaign trails, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, and then went into the White House on the first day and got it done. When? You got to respect this man. He is the OG, okay? The 45th and the 47th. But with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning into the live show. You know what time it is. It is your boy, Genesis. Instead of looking for perfection, seek for consistency. Never give up on yourself. Never give up on your dreams. Never give up on God. Believe in yourself, believe in your dreams, and believe in Almighty God, okay? Thank you to the veterans. Thank you to the military, the active military members. You protect the homeland. God bless you. Thank you for your service. And fathers, take care of your kids. Okay, God bless you. And if you're just joining, double tap your screen, subscribe to the channel, join the memberships. It is $4.99. If you like the channel, join the memberships. $4.99. Thank you guys for tuning in. I have to dip right now. Somebody says, so uneducated. So educate me, Mike. Mike, I think you don't understand how terrorist works. It's democracy. Shout out to Sev G. Sev G's probably from Turkey. I think I remember that. Sev G is from Turkey. Shout out to Sev G. Yeah, man. I got to go. Okay, I have to go. I got a 5-year-old, and she's going to be up in about, say, 3-4 hours, and I have to make breakfast. Okay, so you guys be safe, protect your family. Like I'll say one more time, take care of your kids. Okay, mothers have been doing what they could for years. Okay, this new generation fathers, we have to take responsibilities. Okay, because maybe our fathers and maybe our grandfathers may be messed up, but this is our generation. Fathers, take care of your kids. Be responsible. Um, take responsibility. Okay, God bless you. Um, Stay strong. Life is hard. Okay, life is very hard, but never stop going hard on your dream. Never quit. Never ever stop believing. And God is your strength. Okay, God is your strength. Have a wonderful Friday. We will be back here today for sure. And don't forget to subscribe. Turn on your notification button. And I love you guys, man. It is your boy Genesis, and I am signing out.